KoitCast.
Today's guest is a paranormal investigator and researcher from Yorkshire in England. He has been investigating paranormal subjects since 2002 and has been recognised for his honest, no-nonsense approach. Please give a massive Koit welcome to Paul Sinclair. Hi Paul, welcome to KoitCast.
Thank you very much, and it's good to be here and share a few views, ideas, and I don't know, accounts of the strange with you guys.
Exactly. Let's first off say you've got a great name, Paul. I think it's the best name in history, so well done to us.
I shouldn't forget your name, so I'm onto a winner already.
There you go.
I'm not going to be sat there going, "Oh, what's his name?"
Who are you? Where are you from? Can you give us a grounding of who you are? Yeah.
Well, I live on East Yorkshire coast here in the United Kingdom, little fishing town called Bridlington. Not all us lived there. I've been here 33 years, maybe 34 maybe. Before that, I was in South Yorkshire. Joiner by trade. Packed in work when I was 48. Always had this interest due to things that happened in childhood. And I packed in work, and I'm always keen to stress, not because I got loads of money, but I just work really hard, and I can kind of manage and do what I'm doing now, which is looking into the unexplained 24/7, because there's no money in it. You know what I mean? Despite writing books and that, you're never going to be a millionaire from this, but I do it because I love it. I love the accounts. I love getting people's genuine information out there. You feel like you're doing a service sometimes to people who are sharing things, because a lot of people have kept these things tight for many, many years. Just there's no outlet for them. And I don't mean I'm only one out there, but people do come with the strange and unusual, and I just like writing about them, speaking about them, and things that have happened to me as well. What else? 4 girls, married. That's about it. It's and this now is pretty much 24/7.
Excellent. I like the fact that you quit, or did you quit, or were you maybe let go, or
no? I quit. I chased money all
moving into this.
No, I chased money all my life, and I don't mean that. Everything I'd got were with these, and so as a joiner, you can just work for the same building company all your life if you want, and take a steady 9 to 5 and just get a wage at end of week. But as soon as a building site started getting slow, I looked for another one, and I started, and it were roofing, first fixing, any type of joinery, and it were all price work. I just chased money. I always had an end game. I've seen so many bricklayers, so many joiners who are walking around, and I'm 61 and younger than me, and they're absolutely worn out, and as soon as I get chance, get my house paid off, get everything in a line, everything in order, I'm out of this. And I literally did walk away from it. People on building sites never thought I would, because you would have called me greedy, because I just jumped from job to job, roof to roof, first fix to first fix. I know we shouldn't. I'm not saying we shouldn't. I know we didn't intend talking about this, but you did ask. But I didn't see it as greed. If I'm out at house at 7 a.m, I'm there to work. I'm there to get. I weren't taking anybody's money, but I was there to work and earn money for myself. Maybe a bit deeper than we thought we were going to go with that, Paul, but there you go.
No, I like that. And the reason I asked that question is because I'm actually in a very, very similar position to you. I finished work recently, and I'm 49 at the moment. I'm now doing stuff that I like doing. So we're following similar paths. And I want to touch on this bit, which is you're doing something now that you love.
Yeah.
Is it like 100 times better than the joining work, or is it just on par? Where are you with it?
Every single day that I got up to go to work on a building site, I never enjoyed it. The first thing I wanted to do when I arrived on a building site was go home. And you know, I was first person there, and I was usually last.
Yeah.
I was probably the first person there and the last to leave. And I've worked till steam's been coming off top of my head, just gathering it. And sometimes you go and you could think, well, I've earned £500 today. I've earned £200 today. So would you call it greed? No, because I had an end game. I were always wanting to get, and now I don't have loads of money, but I'm just in a position where I can do this. It would always the plan not to do this. Not to do this necessarily, Paul, if you know what I mean. The plan was to just get out of work. So many people do it, and the packing work at say 65, and they just fall over. And you think, where's your quality of life? What you done?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Exactly
that's
my plan. I consider it a plan. You work hard, you get a lot of money. It's not greed. I never chased money per se, but I did it because I had an end goal of I want to live life between say 50 till when I pop my clogs. I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
want to do exactly what you said, which is earn money to 65, then drop dead after a week. What's the point of that?
Well, you hear of people doing
Anyway,
that, don't you? It's
yeah, you
absolutely
do, and I
nuts.
didn't want to be one of them.
No. So hopefully you're
Okay, so
out of it. Go on then.
definitely. Let's jump into your paranormal journey. What brought you then into the paranormal theatre, despite not just the quitting work side of thing? What was your introduction to it? Because there must have been a kick-off point for you. Your interest.
Yeah, well, I suppose introduction to it were childhood. And as I've said many times, you don't know how old you were. I'm assuming 4 or 5 years old, and when 61 now, and these memories have never left, and you kind of wake up in night and you see things that shouldn't be in your room, and it's not some kind of, I don't know, for want of a better word, some kind of trauma or abuse that you're covering up, masking with something else. These were real. What for all intents and purposes, people would call them aliens. I'm reluctant to say in the context that most people think as regards outer space, because none of us have a clue. But they were there in my room, and I don't mean every night, I don't mean every month, I don't know, but I've got the memories of them from childhood. I mean, I think probably earliest one. I'm laid in this little bedroom at Old Dennerby, 3-bedroomed council house. So you can get the picture if you're from somewhere like that. Little bedroom, medium bedroom, big bedroom. Mum and dad are in, so I'm in this back bedroom, and we've got these grey curtains up at the window. They were made of fiberglass. Can't even imagine you could buy fiberglass curtains anymore. They were like a grey, sparkly grey colour,
No.
grey blue. And I'm laid in bed, and I shouldn't have been able to see them any road because it's night. And I'm looking at the curtains, and I can see eyes, big black eyes. At back of our house, we had cattle in pasture at back. I said we had, we didn't own them. So I've got nothing to draw reference on, and I'm looking at these big eyes, and I'm thinking that the cow's eyes, because they're that big. And I'm watching them, and they're sort of morphing in and out. It were really weird. And I don't mean I've got a great sequence of events, because the next thing I remember, they're around my bed, which is impossible because my bed were outside at wall, but they're either side of it, which is odd. And I'm crying, and I can't move. I know I can't move. I can remember that part, and I can remember crying. So that's all I remember of it. But when somebody's had something like that happen to them, there's lots of them. I wrote Night People. I'll show you that later. But I wrote Night People, and I when I set about writing book, I think I put in it like you're not going to get a sequence of events where I don't know, you see what people perceive as an alien spacecraft, and then I don't know, next thing you know, you're on board it and all. I've got none of that. I've just got these cameos of events that for best part of my life, I've sort of searched to try and get a little bit more. I want to know what happened before these eyes appeared. I want to know what happened before. I can't remember anything apart from I'm crying and I'm outside at bed. They're outside at bed, but I can't. And something tells me I'm not gonna either. After all this time, because I have really tried. I thought when I wrote Night People, and about all these events and the things that happened with our girls and with Mary, my wife, I thought that it were going to be some kind of revelation. I would sort of, when I'm sort of going deep into this, writing this book, I'm going to remember more. There were 2 things in book, literally 2 things. I can't even remember the second one. It'll come to me, but there were 2 things in book where I just remembered a little bit more, but nothing else. It's just the way life is, isn't it? I mean, people talk about regression. And people have said, "Dear fans," I spoke to Travis Walton, and spoke about regression. I mean, I don't mean at any length. I mean, I think I've met him twice at conferences, and I spoke with Whitley Strieber in a bit more detail than anybody else, to be honest with you, when I first started writing Night People, because he said, "Are you sure you want to go ahead and write this and get it out there?" And I was, but I don't know. I think for the account that I've got and the account that other people claim that they've had these experiences have got who are out there, I think that there's countless more which are far more interesting than what I've got to share, or Whitley Strieber or Travis Walton. I think they're out there, but it's such a traumatic thing that a lot of people are going to take it to grave. Jumping from that, we did our live stream last night, and a question come up about, do you think people are getting abducted less? We spoke to a guy called David Altman, and he thinks they were. I think that was his answer, but I don't. I disagree. I think that in many cases, it's just so traumatic, they won't talk about it. Where I go looking and doing a bit of research on these cliff tops in East Yorkshire, there's an elderly couple a few years ago went up there for an evening walk. So it's not quite dark. And these people are in the late 70s, still fairly active, but having a walk. I know a very close relative of theirs, that's all I'll say. And I found out the day after it happened. And so they were willing to talk, because I don't think they'd fully allowed things to settle. And I think if I'd have had a week or 2 weeks, that'd have been it, that I never spoke, because they won't now, and they won't speak to anybody. And they claimed that they were taken from the cliff tops. There's a flash of light, nothing else. There's a flash of light, and then they're inside a room. They don't say they're inside a spaceship. Everybody seems to, it's the common thought that we're inside a spaceship. Why? Why do we think that these things are coming from outer space when people are having interactions with them? I don't mean every day, but all around the world, throughout man's documented history kind of thing. And they're having procedures performed on them. An old lady, intimate procedures. She's never going to talk about that. Do you know what I mean?
No.
And there's so many people out there with things far more traumatic, and in some instances far more interesting. If you can, and I don't think people derive pleasure from it, as in listening to the stories. I think a lot of times people are searching for answers to their own little bits of the puzzle. Something might have happened, and then you get on this path. That's where we're sat here today, and people will be listening to your podcast, and I might say something, you might say something that just ticks a box for somebody and just sends them off down another avenue of, let's have a look and see what that was. I don't know where we started with that one, Paul, but yeah.
That's where we ended, yeah. I think it's the mystery aspect that intrigues everyone, and that's why we keep pushing for the answers. And that's why I want to ask this question, and you alluded to it, was the regression. Would you do it? Have you done it? And if you haven't, what is the reasons why you've chosen not to?
I suppose, yeah. I suppose you should never say never, because too many people say that and they think, oh, well, look, they said he'd never do that. At this present time, I don't think I would. And I've never felt the urge to do regression, simply because you don't know if you'd plant, I don't know, if a false memory, and you distort I know what I can remember. I know what's there. And regardless of if somebody wants to say it was lucid dreaming, or if somebody wants to say he must have done some hallucinogenics. I've never done drugs. So, but you're always going to get people coming up with answers and solutions as to why these things are happening. And at the end of the day, the only person that really knows is the person who's experienced it. Come on, where did the question start? Regression. No, I wouldn't.
Yes.
Because I just
would you do it?
No, because I wouldn't want to create some false memory or some false scenario, just a suggestion, and the door opens. There's a lot of, I wouldn't say gullible people or stupid people out there. I don't mean that. But when we're looking for answers, if you dropped on the wrong researcher, and we'll use that word lightly, the expert, because there is none, but the wrong expert, you come into contact with the wrong expert, and he's got his own narrative, his own idea of why this is happening. He might turn around to this witness who's looking for the answers and say, I can tell you exactly who abducted you and what race of aliens that were. And then suddenly you either go down that road and hang on every word, or you take on this persona. And do you know what I mean? And you become something. You become something. You become a super soldier, or you become something else. And and you're laughing, and I totally get it, because that's how it makes me feel. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. You don't want to colour the evidence. Exactly,
don't want to colour the evidence,
and I don't think
anybody. Yeah, and I don't think anybody else should colour the evidence. And I'm not saying that there isn't some great qualified people out there who can take you into regression. It's just not for me.
No, that's fair enough. Let's move into the investigation side of things because this always intrigues me about people. So, first off, can you give us a rundown on an investigation? How it would start, what would you do first, etc., and then right through to conclusion if you get
Well,
to one.
well,
So just a synopsis, if
yeah,
you will, of that.
I can give you a sequence of events, but remember, Paul, that
Yes.
everything's going to be different. As no one person or group of people are going to come at you with the from the same angle, and they're all different people to
Hmm.
deal with. Some people have already got an interest in it and they've had an experience. Some people, it's traumatic. You've got to be careful when you're speaking to people and offer them assurances. And probably one of the first things I do is thank them for sharing the information with me, give them an assurance that if they want the names omitting, or any details that would link it back to them or their family, I give them that assurance, because I wouldn't like it if I'd said something that had cost somebody quite a lot of problems. Do you know what I mean? So, for instance, we got a sighting, a report this year from from Speeton, and I've spoken to the witness, spoken to his partner. We've met on several occasions. I haven't obtained permission from the landowner because they have a field at the back of their property. There's a few sheep in it and what have you, and there's this farm which has nothing to do with them. And this guy gets up walks into his garden during the night about 11 o'clock. There's a huge orange sphere sat on the field. So actually, a landed whatever it is, a landed whatever, and shouts his partner. They're looking at it. It morphs into a cigar shape, goes into air. First of all, I go contact the landowner, or I find someone who might know the landowner. And I know lots of people. So if we're local to area, I try and find somebody, because it gives you an inroad. Because to just knock on somebody's door, a farmer, and just say, excuse me, but I've had this report. A lot of people might just roll their eyes, even if they've seen stuff, and say, "I'm sorry, no, you can't come." So I found somebody who knew the landowner, got him to approach him as a go-between, because it was important to get on the land. This thing looked like molten lava. It was like a flaming ball, and I'm thinking something that's been on the field within a week or 2 weeks. There's going to be scorched earth. There's going to be damaged trees that were behind it. So I do that, gather all that information up, and then I just start to write it. As we said, the 23rd of February, blah. These people, and in this case, it were Ian and Paula, and they didn't mind me using their names, and I'll just document it from start to finish. Usually, it never finishes because something else will come in. You might get a report 6 months later, a year later. Somebody might just read something, not even interested in UFOs, but something might crop up on social media, and it'll just ping in, and somebody will say, "On that night, I lived at top end of Speeton village, and I saw." It just adds a bit more meat to the bone. I don't think there's a set pattern. I think it's just about being fair with people, Paul. And actually, like we said, giving them assurances, because the last thing that you want to do is get a load of information off somebody and then put it out there, and then get a load of we call it abuse, verbal abuse, from the people that have been kind enough to share information, because you've said things that they didn't, personal information, details about roughly where they live and the names, and they might not want the neighbours knowing, and you lose credibility. Basically, I think it's all about credibility. Yes. Maybe that's not answered it in full, because I don't really think there is a set pattern that you'd go through, because you've got to treat each case on an individual basis.
So it's perfectly unique. There's no template per se, although you would sort of follow the "thank you, I'll go and have a look, I'll document." So it's a loose template.
Yeah, there is a template. Yeah, you're right. There's a loose template. There's kind of rules that I follow, and and if somebody says I'm not ready to talk, I don't pester them. I just say, thanks for your time. Let's assume somebody's told me about something, which happens. I'll give you an example. The Links Golf Course in Bridlington. Some guy got in touch with me from Bridlington who said, years ago, I think it was 2002, I used to work at the supermarket. I'd just left school, got a job at the supermarket, and one of the managers or staff higher up in the supermarket. We were all outside having a cigarette. And he tells me that he went on the driving range at the Links golf course with a friend, and they saw a monster. And he says, and we all laughed at him. He says, we all laughed. And he told us a bit of the story, this white thing that just looked, it was just white and thin, emaciated looking bipedal thing, stepped out of the driving range because there's a tree line. Imagine a rectangle. It's got trees either side and trees at the bottom, just for protection of the other golfers, I would imagine. He says, and it stepped out and walked across. He says, and me and my friend saw it. We didn't see eyes. But when I whispered to my friend, swearing, what the F is that? It looked at us, even though we didn't know it had looked at it. It stopped and we knew it were looking at it, frightened us to death. So we just got this little cameo of an event. But he said, I can't remember who it was. He says, it's all those years ago. And we laughed and the guy shut down. He was quite upset because he told us something and he got this reaction. Well, I did loads and loads of digging because I wanted this story. And I'll not drop myself in it and say where he works. But I later went to the supermarket. Those people that had worked there for probably 30 years. So I didn't go into detail about story. I says, I'm after speaking to somebody about 2002, narrowed it down to a few managers, and I got this name. And then I put this name into the internet with the great thing that it is. And this guy still lived in Bridlington. Turns out he worked at a place in Bridlington and it showed his picture. I think, how do I approach this one? So I rang his work. I asked to speak to him. I didn't go into any detail, but I told him that, I'd been told something. I said, there's nothing. First of all, I'm not a high pressure salesman and I'm not after buying anything or selling anything. Just bear with me a few minutes. And I just explained that somebody had told me about something he'd told them back in 2002 when he worked at Coop's supermarket. I don't mind saying the Coop supermarket. And it kind of ticked enough boxes for him to contact me later. I had to wait about 4 weeks before he contacted me. I left it after that, but he did. And he basically confirmed the story. Would I like a face-to-face interview with him instead of a telephone conversation and emails? Absolutely, because it's an incredible story. But I guess that's a breakdown of how you'd get to somebody or get to a witness. Do you know what I mean? And there were no pressure.
A lot of round about the houses to get to people.
It takes a lot of doing. I mean, just out of interest, look at this lot. These are all paperclip. They're all individual cases. There's piles of them, and that's what you've got to do. It's not good enough to just say, "Oh, Joe Smith's just rang me up. He's seen a UFO at Flamborough." And then just go on a podcast and start telling them, oh, yeah, a guy rang me the other day, said he'd seen a UFO at Flamborough. What colour were it? He didn't say really. I think it was blue. And you've got to do the witness justice. That's what I'm saying. And I didn't pressure this guy. After that initial phone call, I just left it and I thought, well, he's never going to get back to me. And he did. And 3 weeks later, he must have just been thinking about it, told him who I was. He's maybe looked at a few podcasts. I don't know, but I don't know whether that explains to people listening to this just a little bit about how my head ticks. I don't know.
No, it does. It certainly opens my eyes a bit to it. I want to say a couple of things here. First off, I have a question for you, which is knowing that, because you mentioned earlier that none of these cases are really ever complete per se, because later on down the year, somebody's going to provide you more information. How do you reconcile that? How do you live with the fact that you've got something that isn't complete? Is it frustrating? Because you're never going to have a complete case, are you, really?
Yeah. Do you know something? Frustrating is the word, because when you've poured a lot of time and effort into something, and then sometimes the person that's giving you the information says, I don't want you to put it out there. They've already given it you. You could change the name, you could change location, so long as the core of the story was right, you could run with it. But I won't do that. And so that part of it's frustrating. There's other parts that are frustrating when you actually know that certain individuals are sitting on incredible information, and for whatever reason, and their own reason, it's their right. They won't share that information. They won't talk about it. A lot of times, or some of the times, it doesn't fit with the narrative of way they the way they perceive the world and what should and should not exist. And it clashes with everything. And I don't just mean their religious views, because even if they're not particularly religious as such, if they've been brought up in a Church of England background or any other religious background, throughout life it does shape you a little bit. And if you're of the thought process that there's no such things as these strange craft that people see and the alien type beings, cryptid type beings, no amount of persuasion will change it or make you talk about it. It's also like my mind's made up, so I'm not changing it. I've seen a UFO, but I don't believe in them. Yeah, I've heard that before. How crazy is that? I did see something really strange, but I don't believe in UFOs. And I'm thinking, well,
it's like saying I saw a tree, but I don't believe in trees.
Yeah, I don't believe it's real. I walked into
it's the same thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's nuts.
Do you know what the biggest mystery of all is, Paul? Is not the paranormal per se. It's actually the human mind. Because if everyone was 100% open about everything, we would have solved or gotten near to a solution on this stuff thousands of years ago.
Yeah, I think you're right.
We seem to obfuscate everything.
Yeah, I think we probably wouldn't have solved it, although what do I know, we might have done. But we'd have reached a place where people just knew the reality of it, regardless of whether science couldn't wrap its head around it. I mean, all the things throughout time that science has said can't possibly be, this can't possibly exist. This, and now, I don't mean every scientific mind in the world is kind of changing its mind, but there is a shift. There is a core belief, I believe, from academia and from people of science that the things that people are seeing and experiencing are real. And you've only got to look at it with these disclosure meetings, when people were coming out with things. I think it's interesting that they've changed the terminology from extraterrestrial to non-human. It's almost as though they've shifted it and molded it into something that we're going to be told about in the future. Do I think that disclosure will come from these people? No, I don't, to be honest with you. Disclosure will come from people like you, people who are listening to this. And basically, I know we've jumped from quite a few things there, but basically, I think if you've seen and experienced something and there's no rational explanation after turning it over in your mind, not just for a couple of hours, but days, years, then you've gone beyond, I believe, you don't have to understand it.
Yes.
There lies the problem. There lies my problem for myself. I was trying to understand this for years. I was trying to understand how these things could be passed through a brick wall in just a semi-detached council house. How could that be? I don't want to try and understand it. If something happens where I do understand it, then that's good. But I'm not going to waste time and energy trying to understand the mechanics of how this could happen. It happened, and I think that's the acceptance that we've got to have first. It's just what I think won't suit everybody, but I'm just looking at it from my perspective.
Sure. I have one more question, actually, alluding to your sighting, if you will, from the night people, which is, do you think that event was put to you so that you would be nudged to do this work later on down the line? Or do you think it was just a random thing that happened?
I don't know. It's possible, it really is possible. And I'll give you my reasoning why, and let your listeners and people listening to this think, well, yeah, maybe that's the reason. So we had these events, these happenings in childhood, probably petered out when we left that house, and now we're about 14 years old, because I can't remember it happening at Conisborough, where we moved only about 3 or 4 miles away. So then there's this big gap. Things happen, but nothing of any great significance. So there's this big gap from 14 to probably, I don't know, 29. I don't know how old I was. In 1993, we moved here. So there's things happened. I didn't even tell my wife about these things for years. And then a few things happened to us, but not on the scale that it happened in childhood to me. But then we move into this house in 1993, and it started straight away. So then I say to people, I wonder if his lives are planned out. I wonder if there's something almost like this is what's going to happen to him now, and and he gets run over by that car on 25th of November. I hope that doesn't happen, by the way. Do you know what I'm saying?
Not this year, anyway.
we know that the thought process would not be like that, but it almost felt too perfect for it not to have been orchestrated, if that makes sense. For me to move to this house,
yes,
and the house that we moved in, the house that we moved into, the people that owned it prior to us had practiced, and this is not something we practice, but clairvoyance and things of an occult nature. So when we're stripping wallpaper off this house, huge Victorian house, like 5 monster bedrooms in it with 10-foot ceilings. When we're stripping wallpaper off, there's pentagrams and all occult symbolism behind the wallpaper. When you're lifting floorboards up, there's little St. Christopher's. When you lift the floorboards up, you want to look where the wiring is and things, and you'd have a pendant dropping through the ceiling. And verses from the Bible placed in under the floorboards and things. And you'd think to yourself, so I'm interested in all this. I'm at this place I am today, and I speak about these things, and nothing happens from 14 to 1993 of any great significance. And we move into this house and it's happening. I don't mean it happened within months. It happened within days. It just started again, 1993. And I think it petered out about early 1997 when I got the holes in my back in early 1998. And when I got the holes in my back in 97, that's when it kind of stopped. That what worst thing. So there, to the people who say the things that happened to him in childhood, I think it's just lucid dreaming or, over active imagination. And then the things that happened to him between 1993 and 1997, as in the wounds, how do you explain that? How do you explain seeing these beings and then waking up the next morning and having 3 holes in your back? You don't create them in a dream. do you know what I'm saying? So either I'm lying or these things happened. And believe me, there's no great pleasure sometimes in talking about these things. And I don't talk about them outside of this. I can go out, have a few beers, go out with friends. We don't have these conversations. I don't do it. It doesn't consume me in another environment. That's all I'm saying, So I don't know how we got to that point, Paul, but there you go.
That's okay. It's all right. I like the way we can meander into topics here. I like it because it opens up more questions. Here's a thought, right? So you had this scenario at childhood in this one location. You had a gap in the middle where you weren't at that location. And from 93 to 97, your current house, where things were happening. Does that tell you that the paranormal subject or whatever is happening is tied to locations rather than the person? Do you think?
Yeah, I think it could be, but I think what I was getting at there, Paul, is the perfect kind of synchronicity of it all coming together. Somebody who's had experiences in childhood, somebody then happens to pick this house that's already got activity. And I've said many times, location is key. So, I wouldn't step away from that. There's a certain place on the cliff tops. We call it a hill, because when you look at it from the cliffs, it does look like a hill. When you get on top of it, it just goes back at the same plane. It doesn't go down at the other side. But it's a location within the affected area that seems more concentrated than others. Now, this property did, by these people who'd lived in it previous and doing whatever they were doing, I don't know really. We don't know full extent to what they were doing. I mean, when we moved in, just to jump away from that for a moment, there were bin liners full of letters. Literally a room. There are lots of rooms in this house, beautiful old Victorian house, and we were burning them. I wish I'd have kept them, and they were all in different handwriting, and then you'd have another paragraph in different handwriting, and it were automatic writing. There were spirit letters, and there were all sorts of messages in these letters. So then, what I'm getting at, Paul, is did the people who were doing this kind of imprint the property with some kind of the essence of this some kind of unknown that then were interacting and focused on us. I don't know. You know, we've got 4 girls, and the girls experienced things in the property as well. You know, I mean, my eldest daughter Sarah clearly remembers waking up in the night, and it almost sounds like a man in black. She said there's a man sat at the bottom of the bed with a black suit. I've just said a black suit on and a black hat. She remembers looking at him and then sort of going back to sleep and then waking up and looking again. And I think she said he was still there. Just weird little scenarios. I've turned this property into flats now, so it's 3 flats. Hence the reason I can kind of manage. When I say when I said at the very beginning, I got loads of money, you know, with my hands, we've turned this property into 3 flats, so you get an income from the flats. Do you know what I mean? So that's part of the reason. So never told the tenants. One of the tenants years ago comes knocking on the door. Is this property haunted? So why do you ask? Yeah. And funnily enough, it was the bedroom where I'd seen these beings in 97, and I got the holes in my back. You know, when I woke up the following morning. And I'll go into that one in a moment. But I said, why? She said, well, I was laid in bed last night. And she has a little Yorkshire Terrier, a yappy little thing. Or she did have, but it didn't bother us because it's all soundproofed. But she said, and he's on the bed. She says, and I felt the bed go down. And somebody sat at the side of the bed. She says, I'm sat this way and it's sat there. She says, and I've moved my feet and I could feel Buster. That's what they call this little dog. So I knew you were there. And I went, who's there? She says, I had a conversation with somebody. This somebody called himself Alexander or Alistair St. Clair. My name's Sinclair, not St. Clair. I've no relative that I know of that name. So I don't know whether it were connected to us, but she had this weird conversation. Just quirky little things. I mean, you need to interview Bob Brown at some point. He does a radio show. And he's done a radio show since before.
I don't know the name.
Yeah, Bob Brown. It's the Out of Nowhere radio show, or Out of Nowhere. He's done it for years. It used to be Beacon of Light Radio, but now it's Out of Nowhere. He's interviewed some great people, but he'll tell you about his experiences because he's in our top flat. And the things that Bob's seen and experienced. I mean, he's upstairs. It's like we said, a big Victorian house, and something will walk through the room. Just the shadow of something, and if you'd not experienced this yourself, you'd think, he's making it up. He's heard me talking about this, but the girls have seen it. Mary's seen it. We've all seen these things over the years. So when I say things stopped in 97, 98, these kind of things have carried on. But when I say things have stopped, you know, that night in 97, me and Mary had been out. In them days, I loved to. We were all us out, you know, and I don't mean getting absolutely drunk and stuff, but we'd go out. If you work hard on if you work hard on a weekend, it were nice to go out. Girls were old enough to do their own thing, as in they were quite capable of being left and unsupervised in house. So we'd come home, have a bite to eat, and I remember going to bed, and I woke up. There's no lights at the back of the property. There's properties way in distance, but there's no big searchlights or spotlights, and I can see these lights on wall in bedroom turning. And I think curtains were shut anyway. And in the lights, I kept seeing a glimpse of what I thought I'd seen from childhood. And you're watching it, you see, that's another thing. And I wonder if this resonates with people who've had these experiences. You're always going to be ready. You're always going to be ready when it happens again. You've formed it in your head. You know what you're going to do and you're going to be ready, and you're not. Or I am not. Never. I just found myself looking at it. I found myself rabbiting headlights. Then they're outside at bed. Mary's in bed with me, but they're outside at bed. How does that work? I've no recollection of being on a spaceship or anything more exotic than I were in this room, but I can't have. One part of me says I can't have been, because where was she if they're outside at bed? And I've got a pain in my back. It's absolutely excruciating. It's absolutely, it's terrible. I think I passed out, but I've no knowledge that I did. I can only assume I did. The pain was so severe. And they're talking to me and they're telling me not to panic in here. It's like, you know, they're saying it in my mind. And it's a bed spring turning in my back, of all things. You know, we don't have. I don't sleep on an old mattress in a barn. It's a decent bed, but that's what they're telling me. Excuse me. Next morning, I wake up, forgot all about this. There's a knocking at the door. That's why I woke up, and it's Peter who lives across the road. His wife's still there. Pete's passed away, so I'll go into that one in a moment. So I can hear girls. Normally, I'm up, which is odd because I'm really early riser. I've been up since 5 this morning, and you know, so I'm laid there, and I can hear. I don't know. Assume it was Jessica or somebody. She wanted to be first to open door, and she's talking to somebody. I don't know who it is. So I decide I'm getting up, and I sit at edge of bed, no clothes on. I'm just sat there. And Mary, at this point, because of the knocking at the door, Mary turned around and she went, "Oh my God, Paul, I don't believe it." And I said, "What?" She said, "You've got 3 holes in your back." And I said, "You what?" She says, "No, they're really bad." She says, "You've got 3." And suddenly I could remember the lights on the walls. I think if I'd have got up and put a shirt on, I'd have forgot that even that, because I think that's what happens, you know. If we can gather a little bit of it or all of it straight after it's happened, we can hang on to those memories. But anyway, she said, "No, it's really bad, this, Paul. You've got 3 holes in your back." So I remembered what I've just told you. The speaking to me and saying it's a bed spring. She got up, put a dressing gown on, and came back with one of them cameras where you just snap a picture and it fires a picture out. Kodak in it, you know, Instamatic.
Polaroid, yeah.
Thank God she had presence of mind to do that, because otherwise, I'd have, not that it's not proof of anything, but anyway, she took this picture which I've put in Night People. It's pretty rubbish picture, but I've still got it, and it's proof that I got these holes in my back. And I woke up that morning, went up to hospital because they were bad. You know, if you got your little finger, you could put your little finger into one of the holes. Yeah, they weren't,
crikey, big holes.
Yeah, these weren't little like match head holes. You know, like a cigarette would have gone in like 1/4 of an inch. So went up to the hospital. The doctor's looking at the holes. He said that he thought they looked like laser burns because they'd been cauterized. There were no blood. It were like looking into liquid. There were no blood on the sheets. There were nothing. He was asking me to tell who, you know, speak about who'd done it to me, and I'm lying to his face because I knew what had happened. And he knew that I was lying, but obviously not in the context that I was thinking. He thought somebody had actually done this to me. Well, I don't know, with something really hot and pushed it into my back, and I was protecting somebody, and which I said I weren't doing. And you know, a weird situation. And there's some doctors just written a paper on this. Proper doctors have just written a paper on this, and what I'm just telling you now. They only did it about a month ago. So that's going to be out somewhere shortly. And yeah, basically that's when we'd call it the abuse, if you like, when the actual physical trauma stopped for me. And yeah, that were frightening when you think about it, because it's completely out of your control. You're completely at the mercy of these unknown others. So when people say to me, "Do you know, I think they're here for good of mankind." Well, from my own experience, there's nothing good with taking people or subjecting people in the dead of night to procedures and trauma like that. It's almost like experimenting on a lab rat, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
I'm with you. I flick backwards and forwards on this because I speak to loads of people on this topic, and obviously some will do exactly what you said, which is say they're all here for great things and that. But I'm with you on the fact that, let's look at the facts. If you're taking someone without their permission, and then you take their skin cells and God knows what else on them, that's not a positive thing. So no. I tend towards that myself. I mean, if you look at your case, what benefit is there of taking 3 hole punch-sized skin blobs from your back?
No,
I mean, there was presumably you didn't find cancer or anything there, or nothing was found in that area.
Nothing at all. I mean, you could turn it on its head. I personally don't think there's anything good in it, but you could turn it on its head and think, well, maybe you had got some life-threatening illness, and maybe they fixed you. Do you know what I mean?
It's possible. Yeah.
No. So there's that way of looking at it. But just before we end that, the knocking on the door earlier prior to getting up.
Hmm.
A guy called Peter, and I'd known him since we'd moved in there, and he very, very, very reserved kind of man. I were friends with him, but he'd not got many friends. He'd had a colourful past, let's just put it at that. And part of his work in the past, he worked in a foundry and he damaged his lungs, so he didn't sleep laying down. He slept in a nice leather chair in his front room, with net curtains up, and he'd go to sleep and then wake up, I suppose, have a cigarette, despite having his lungs damaged. And it was Peter, unusually, at the door, knocking at the door, and he wanted to know if we were all okay, because in the early hours of the morning, he'd seen flashes of light from the rooms in the house. So, and I wrote about that in Night People, and does all of this mean that something visited us? That's up to individual. I know what happened, but I'm not after pushing my truth on people. And then you're going to get other people saying, well, you must be, you've written a book. I've written a book because it were good for me. It were good for me to write that and get that out there. It's there now, and whether you want to believe it or not, it's there. Just like other people's truths. I've spoke to many people, Paul, like you've just been saying you do. And I'm not rude to people, but sometimes when I'm talking to him, I'm thinking, I know I'm not going to be writing this one up. I know that you saw Space Station. I've looked at the time that you said this went over, and you're saying that this glowing white sphere passed over, and you got a sense of feeling that it were communicating with you, and then you look where they saw it, and I don't have to be rude and said, oh, look, you're deluded, you saw Space Station, but you just know you don't follow things through. But then there's other people, it really ticks boxes, and you think, yeah, I've got to speak more to these people. I've got some incredible cases, to be honest with you. Now I writ the Truth Proof 4. I don't know when we did it, probably 18 months since, and I didn't think I was going to do another one, and I will be doing, because there's so much. I can't even keep up with it, to be honest with you. There's that much information coming in, and I've created this word. I'm on with another book, and because obviously we live on edge at North Sea, and a lot of these things are seen over the sea. I've got reports of things entering the sea, leaving the sea. So for your listeners, just remember, Paul, I don't own the words. Nobody owns the words, but it's good if you've created something that's quite catchy, if people acknowledge that you're the one that's created it. So the new book will be called The Sub-Universe, The Submerged Universe, because I think that a lot of these things potentially could reside in the sub-universe. So that's, I don't know, just a play on words, but I think it's quite a nice word.
No, I like it. Here's the thing, before we move slightly ajar, or aside, should I say. Earlier we were talking about people coming forward with their information and that, and then you said, oh, immediately some people can just get reserved and then think better of it and they don't bother. Do you have cases in your files or whatever that you think are absolutely astonishing, but they'll never see the light of day because you've never been given permission?
Yeah. I can think of one straight away. And all I'll say is it involved a trawler in Hull, from Hull, should we say. And I got information and drawings, not photographs, but drawings sent of something that were retrieved from the ocean in another part of the world after this trawler disappeared. They found trawler eventually. It's one of the biggest mysteries out there. So people will be able to put two and two together, which trawler I'm talking about. But the actual story, the actual information that I've been given, it involved the Russians and it involved the British working together because of
to secure something from the floor.
Because of the significance of what was found. So there's that one, yeah, and there is another one, and so there is information that potentially, well, that one I will talk about, but if this guy, sounds horrible, if this guy passes away, who's given me the information, no, that's kind of the understanding. I will talk about it because I know for a fact, and he knows for a fact, that if he's sitting on this and never spoke about it, where he lives, there's still there's a lot of passion and a lot of feeling about this tragedy. and he's quite well known within the fishing community, and it wouldn't be nice for him. I don't mean to get violence against him, but it wouldn't be nice for him. So yeah, I shall wait, and it might get told eventually, it might not, and so yeah, there are a few things, Paul, but you've just got to sit on it, haven't you, and just hope that more information comes to light. And probably one of the most interesting cases for me is from 1970, and it's so we're going back over 50 years, and it's the lightning that tragedy that crashed into the North Sea on September 8th, 1970, just off the coast where I live. XS 894, this lightning was called, and it had an American exchange pilot in it. And I'm always keen to stress that I've got no proof that it was UFO related, but there's a lot of information out there that packs around it that shows the strangeness of the day. And I stress that because there's a great researcher called Tony Dodd. If anybody wants to look up Tony, or if you already know, and he wrote a book called Alien Investigator in 1990s, and he looked into the case, and he found a transcript that I think were fake of the lightning, saying it's got orange conical shaped balls of orange flying at the side of it, and there's and I'm losing in and out of radio transmission, and there's lots and lots of information about it, which infuriated the family of the deceased pilot. But lots of things, I mean, it were never found when they retrieved the aircraft from the seabed and the canopies closed. He wasn't in it. Lots and lots of things, and it could be just a tragedy, and so we can't. I think would be wrong to say it were UFO related, but does it intrigues because, and I might get my dates wrong here, but like days before Lightning XS 894 crashed into the sea, and it's a lightning just before we get that, it's a lightning aircraft. These were the fastest planes in the world that were known about at the time. The acceleration on a lightning was incredible. Its lowest flight speed was about 200 miles an hour. Yet when they retrieved it from seabed, it only had a little bit of nose cone damage, which is interesting. But, because people say, oh, it landed flat pack. It's like a flying dart. So,
exactly. And you hit water at any speed, that collapses it, doesn't it?
Yeah, well,
that's it.
I've found so much information out about this. So days before, we'll say 7 days before, 5 days before, because understand I don't have this information in front of me. I've got a load that says aircraft. I've got a load, but it might be 10 minutes finding it. But the RAF Marine launch, there were 3, I think, based at Bridlington. These vessels was in the bay, not far from where it had gone down days before, and it struck an unknown submerged object and tore a 25-foot by 12-inch hole in its hull and had to be beached on North Beach. Tony Dodd never found any of this information out. I don't mean he weren't a good researcher, but I'm probably boots on the ground, and I actually live here, so it would be easier for me. Does that mean that that's related to a UFO? No, it doesn't. But then days after the lightning went down, a speedboat that I'm told wasn't traveling very fast. I even got to speak to the then child as a grown man. I managed to trace him and find him years later. And wife's watching from shore, and something struck the boat and it disintegrated. They're all clinging to bits of rubbish, bits of wreckage and everything. And a pleasure cruiser called the Glen Rose picked them up. The dad was close to death, the newspaper report said. So you've got these 2 events either side of it. So when you look in an archive, Paul, or anybody looks into an archive, say, looking at old newspapers and go to the treasure house at Beverley, where there's a wealth of information, specifically you look for your chosen subject. If you're looking for, I don't know, exotic birds that might have been seen, hawks and things that don't visit the area much. And, I'm going off on a tangent there, but I'm looking for the unexplained. So you find this lightning crash. You think you found what you want. It's 1970, September 8th. You don't expect to find another highly unusual one a few days before and another one a few days after. It adds to the mystery. So then I speak to a former butcher from the village of Flamborough. Remember, it's gone off the head, Flamborough Head. It's disappeared from Flamborough Head. That they use that as it's the peninsula that sticks 5 miles out into the sea, so it's often referenced. And he goes, as schoolboys, he says, and he tells me this story not related to the lightning, but he says, I've got an interesting one I want to share with you. I says, what's that? He said, well, we went onto the cliff tops and we went to look at a huge scorched circle where adults, presumably, I don't know, fishing or walking, claim a flying saucer landed. And then he said the name of the farmer, Mr. So-and-so, whose land it was on. He says people from the MOD in suits came and they made him plough the field out and like eradicate the traces of this flying saucer that landed. And so this guy's called Dean Bolton. He's no problem with me using his name. He's a former butcher as an adult. So I said, oh, when was this then? He says it were early September 1970. So, you know, how early can you get? It's, to me, it all adds to the intrigue, and there's so much more. You know, it's fascinating. Now, can I put my hand on my heart and say that were UFO related, that aircraft tragedy? No, because I've not got that proof. But if you look at the MOD and the Board of Inquiry report, it's just been put back. I don't know how many years. I'll be pushing up daisies before anybody can read it. So when it were due for release, I think it's 35 years, is it, or 30 years? I can't remember now. And you know, well, I got one a few years ago for ZA610, a tornado that went down. I think it's 30-year rule or 30. But so when that came up for XS, it got pushed back another number of years, and it's been pushed back another number of years. I think it's something like 70 years before you can look at this. So does that just add to the mystery? I think it does. That there's something at least that somebody doesn't want us to know. A bit long-winded that one, really, wasn't it? But you know, it's just.
But I like it because it opens up the fact that you've got to look slightly wider than a narrow focus, because you could be missing lots of detail that would help to enhance the case.
And there's not only that, Paul. But you see, where that lightning went down, we're on a negative magnetic anomaly here. That's on this coastline. There's a lot of talk. It sounds more exotic than it actually is. A good friend of mine, Steve Meara, you'll hear Steve talk about positive magnetic anomalies and things. And no disrespect to Steve or Barry Fitzgerald, they're great guys. Spent a lot of time with them. But it's only where the magnetism is slightly higher or slightly less. I don't know whether it's some kind of magical properties, but it happens to be on a negative here. So the negative doesn't mean, oh, that's why dark, sinister things happen. But where that aircraft went down on June the 15th, 1998, tornado ZE723 went down in a similar area. I find that one interesting because I wasn't actively looking into that. I've been working in area and interested in UFOs, but the actual UFO people of the day, the ones that were prominent and looking into things, thought that was UFO related because there'd been objects seen over the sea. There'd been all sorts of strange happenings, and then this tornado went down. And it's an interesting case. I've written about it and got. I mean, that's the year when the one of the major newspapers reported UFO size of a battleship zigzagging across the North Sea, allegedly picked up by RAF Fylingdales. How true it is, I don't know. It made the papers. That don't mean it's true. We all know that there's a lot of things make papers that aren't true. But there were a lot of things and a lot of interesting things in 1998, and that aircraft going down in a similar area to where the lightning went down. Now, in 1985, tornado ZE610 goes down in that area. I've got the Board of Inquiry report that says that it breaks it down into detail, but it's much more detail, and there's obviously a lot of redacted parts. But the Buccaneer pilots, because they were on exercise allegedly off Flamborough Head, the Buccaneer pilots said that they'd seen lights pass down their port side, and it couldn't have been. and the people writing the Board of Inquiry report conclude that they had seen a nighttime illusion. And it says it in report. I'm probably the only person in the world to have got this report. And it's there for people, I would imagine, to get. You might find that it's been redacted when you apply for it, but I've got it and it's there. But so that one went down in that similar area. And so remember June the 15th, the tornado that went down in 1998. Ironically, June the 15th, 2020, a Sea Eagle went down, an F-15 went down in the same area. Is that just coincidence? Because, there's a lot of aircraft fly and military exercises around that area. So potentially you're going to have accidents, aren't you? That's the potential there. But them two dates coincided. And what I found interesting, it went down, we'll say 9:15 in the morning. Can't remember exact time, but it was 9 something. At the exact time, a body was found a few miles up the beach. I mean, I'm not adding this. This is what the papers have reported. It weren't the pilot. It was nothing to do with that, but it was the same time, the same day. Do you know what I mean? Which is fascinating. I find them things fascinating. Doesn't mean.
Well, they are. They're all there to make you think, aren't they?
Absolutely.
And to make you think, well, are they linked?
What are the chances? And I don't say these things and think, because anybody can listen to me talking, and there'll be some people sat there saying, but you're just making that up. Have a look. Do the research. It's there. I've not said 9:15 for somebody being found or a body being found, and 9:15 for an aircraft going down, thinking, oh, nobody will ever check that. That's where you get tripped. That's where you trip yourself up. If check it, it's true. But what it means, though, people, I don't know. But I find it fascinating. The quirky coincidences, just like the wallabies, the little kangaroos. When everything throws up strangeness. So I'm looking in an archive and I see UFOs seen in Flamborough and Bempton, spheres of orange light. But on the same page in this report, this news report, it says wallaby killed at Sowerby Hall Zoo, which is probably 2 miles away. Can we connect the UFO to the wallaby? Of course we can, because we've got no proof of it, but it's fascinating. So on the same day, the wallaby's killed, the UFOs are seen. So I go do a bit of digging. I end up at Sowerby Hall Zoo. And I think this was 2011, but I didn't go in 2011. I went a number of years after. Spoke to the zookeeper, told him exactly what I was looking for, because it had been decapitated, and that's what fascinated me. I'm not into the macabre, people, but your listeners, people I know, try catching one of them things. I've spoke to zookeepers and that. They're lightning. It'd be like me at 61 trying to catch a wild rabbit. These things move fast. Yet something had caught it. So I spoke to the zookeeper. I went to his office and we sat looking down at the zoo because it were upstairs. And he said, well, it weren't actually one wallaby that were killed. He said the first one got decapitated. We never found the head, and it were a clean cut, but we blamed a fox. He says, but we had 6. He says, and then over the days to follow, all 6 were decapitated. And we couldn't. We thought a fox, so everybody blamed a fox, even though it were a clean cut. So I extended the research, and then I found out that small animal parks throughout the United Kingdom in this month and the months after had their wallabies decapitated. So, Cotswolds, Hanwell Bunny Park, lots of places in the United Kingdom were having wallabies decapitated. Why? So then I thought, right, let's have a look at this. We'll go to Australia. So I contacted animal parks because it's easy, isn't it? The internet opens so many doors. We couldn't writing letters would have been an exhausting exercise, wouldn't it? And waiting for a reply. So I get replies, and sure enough, New South Wales coast, all the way up the New South Wales coast, in that year, in the month slightly before, and in that month, because I can't remember exact month, to be honest now. Someone tells me it was March, and afterwards, wallabies were being decapitated. And so these animal parks, some of them were just big open areas of miles and miles, and they'd call it an animal park, and they were finding these wallabies, clean cuts. They were blaming a fox, but their press, their news outlets of the day were more sarcastic, and they said we're looking for a fox with a samurai sword because the cuts are so clean and nice. Yeah, and there's no blood at the scene. So the authorities, I can remember the exact words on some of them, the authorities believe the wallabies have been killed somewhere else and then placed in these locations because there's never any blood at the scene. So it's fascinating. Can we say that that's true unexplained phenomena that's responsible? As much as we'd want to, we can't, because we don't have that proof. Can we say it's truly anomalous and worth investigating and probably, I hope, interesting to people who are listening to this? Yeah, I think so. Fascinating. It leads you down.
I remember that one in the news. I remember that one in the news at the time and thinking, what the hell's going on? It was quite a big story. I remember that wallaby one. Yeah, it just jumps into the whole animal mutilation category, doesn't it, of the paranormal?
Did you mean to tell
speaking
that,
of the media and the papers and that?
Did you mean to sound funny then?
Sorry, what's
you
that?
It jumped.
What did I say?
It jumped.
No, I didn't. That was a known one. Yeah. When was the first time you saw your name highlighted in the media in relation to the paranormal? And in that moment, what did that feel like?
Did you know? I don't know. When I wrote first book, probably, because I never spoke about any of this. You know, I very rarely never spoke about what had happened to me in childhood. I mean, like I said, and we'll get back to your question in a moment, because I think I've been married for a few years before I started saying fewer things. Well, a few things happened for me and Mary, which opened the door to talk about it more. So when I wrote the first book, this one, I contacted the Bridlington Free Press and the Scarborough Evening News, and I said I'm wanting to write a book about the unexplained, thinking ghosts, UFOs, that kind of thing. And would you put a little advert in for me and say that I'm after other people's stories, people's accounts of the strange? And they did that. So when I saw that, I don't know, it didn't make me think, oh, I've made it now, here we are, this is great. But it were a bit surreal, because then, as a researcher, we'll use that term lightly, because I think we're all researchers, because we're looking for our own bits of the puzzle. You're craving these accounts, because that's what you're there to do. That's what you feel your role is, to write these up, put Paul's account across in the best way possible, in the best light possible. Try not to ridicule him, try not to ridicule her, and that's what you're doing. And so on, they started coming in. Then people were sending me things. Now I wouldn't say it's too much, because I don't want people to stop, but I can't keep up with it. There's that much information coming in. So yeah, it were quite good. And then a few years later, I did the second book, and they did a bit of a feature on it. There's been loads. What I don't mean guilty of, Paul, but what I don't do, and I wish I were good at it, is, although I'm talking on this podcast, and I've talked on loads of podcasts, Coast to Coast, Midnight in the Desert, the really big ones and the smaller ones, loads and loads, but I probably won't even post a link to this. And not that it's not worthy. Same with Coast to Coast. I'm rubbish at this. Some people do, we're going on TikTok and I've just posted it on there, and I'm on this and I'm on that. I'm not very good at it. I'm not very good at this self-promotion, even though we do the YouTube channel.
Promotion, yes, I know.
I'm just not good at it. So, and I wish I was, because we've just done for the last hour and 5 minutes, there's a lot of information out there to share, and I don't think I'm any better or any worse, but I know that what I'm talking about and what I'm putting out, I know it's all been reasonably well sourced, and I'm not just looking on internet and making a story up and suddenly it's going not viral, but going all over the place, and you're thinking, hold on a minute, these people, they've not actually done anything. Wait, point in case, and I'll not say website, although I should, or YouTube channel, We Made Wolflands, the documentary, myself and Les Drake. Took us 3 years to make, and I'm pushing this, I suppose. That's an hard copy, because people still want hard copies, but it's there available on Amazon Prime. But if you go on internet, if you go on YouTube and type in Wolflands, but miss the S off, Wolfland, you'll see me, you'll see one of my friends, Chris Wright, and little clips from the deleted scenes of Wolflands, which we put on internet, like little bits, little short bursts of things we put on YouTube. But it's for Piers Brosnan's son. and it's a film that they're making. It's a blatant rip-off of our work, and it's out there now. It's just, I don't know. So to see myself in that context, and it's not even true, is annoying. We've reported it. Whether it gets removed or not, I don't know. But that might not have answered what you're asking. But there you go.
No, that's okay. You kind of got to the answer I was after anyway, which is makes me think you're like me in that we don't do self-promotion, right? Because it almost doesn't mean a lot to us to have that ego attached to it.
No. No, well, no, no, it doesn't. No, so while we're on with it, I'll say it. A few months ago, I did some work for Blaze TV for Weird Britain. The guys doing that, and they've got their show. I think they've already done one, and they came and did an episode with me where I filled them in on information regarding Rudston Monolith and other things. I spoke to somebody the other day from Blaze TV. Spoke to Blaze TV loads of times, but I see on the internet, I see on social media, certain researcher, great people. So I'm not having a dig, but they'll go, "Oh, I've got a brilliant interview coming up with Blaze TV and all," and it's like that. I find it embarrassing to do. Do you know what I mean? And I should be doing it. It's not embarrassing. It's true. So I've done quite a bit for History Channel, but what I found with History Channel, I set an interview up, and penny didn't drop straight away, and all I was doing was giving information away. I was just giving information away that saves them doing a lot of research. Not that they didn't appreciate it, but now I'm a little bit more sort of guarded with what I give away and who I speak to, because I'm not giving information away about a certain location only to see somebody else then talking about it as though they've done loads of research and they're the expert. That's happened on numerous occasions. Yeah. And it doesn't happen anymore, not from me. I fell for it twice actually, so but the penny's dropped.
Yeah, I'm also on that train. I don't like people taking credit for stuff I've done, but I don't also shout about what I've done, which is what it sounds like you do.
Well, maybe we should not necessarily shout about it, but put it out there more. On the Facebook, for instance, this morning on Facebook feed, an old interview came up, just literally probably a minute of me talking to a guy who claimed he'd seen this strange creature in 1970 when we'd been looking into the Flixton werewolf. And I hovered over it thinking, shall I share this? Do you know? But why? Just share it. You know what I mean? And just let it out there. There'll be a lot of people not heard it, but loads of things like that. I've got loads and loads of footage, loads of interviews that I've got permissions to post out there. So I think just need to get it out there a lot more than I have been doing. Even the podcasts. I've not really spoken on a lot of podcasts recently. You get a bit saturated. You find yourself talking about, even though there's hundreds of things you can talk about, you do think to yourself, well, I've just said this, I've just spoke about this. But then you contradict yourself again by you think to yourself, there are people out there, great people, such as Travis Walton, but that's all he ever talks about. Colonel Holt, the Rendlesham Forest. I've met Colonel Holt, lovely guy, absolutely. But he don't talk about hotels. So there's obviously an audience there, that's what I'm saying, to listen to the same stuff over and over again. But I feel like I should be giving more to people than, in 1997 and I'm laid in bed and they're telling me this, and then I woke up and I have 3 holes in my back. You think, well, I've just done that. But what you've got to understand is that your audience probably ain't going to be my audience or someone else's audience. Do you know what I mean? So I shouldn't be too critical of it, and none of us should, because there are people out there that have just spent decades talking about the same thing. And that's no disrespect to them either. Do you know what I mean? The Travis Walton abduction story is absolutely incredible. But if for me, my experiences have made me search the world, if you like, for more experiences to tie in with my own, for more people's accounts. I don't want to be just regimented to that box that's the only thing I can talk about. Do you know what I mean? It's like UFO researchers. A lot of them won't entertain the cryptid scenario, won't entertain ghosts or poltergeist, because we talk about UFOs and we're not going to talk about anything else. And if a report comes in and somebody talks about seeing a strange cryptid as well, we'll just omit that bit of evidence because it don't fit with the narrative of what I want to talk about. Well, that's bad research, in my opinion. We've got to, no matter how hard it is to bend his head around it, if that's what's being reported by the witness, we have to fit it in.
Exactly, tough. You can't ignore outliers. I want to move slightly aside here into talk of your YouTube channel. I know you mentioned it earlier. What have you learned differently from operating in this medium rather than boots on the ground and face to face?
I don't know. It's brilliant listening to. I like being challenged. I'm not the sharpest chisel in the box kind of thing, but I like. Well, no, but, I mean, I don't think I'm any great intellect, but I like speaking to people who I know are going to challenge my thought process. So I've kind of learned from that. I mean, I've got some great people lined up to speak to. Hopefully, I'll be speaking to Professor Simon Holland. And I don't know if you've seen him, but he's interesting.
No.
But he's way above my intellect with the things that he knows. I mean, it's all relative, isn't it? Let's face it. There'll be some things I've experienced. There'll be some things I can do in life that he'll never be able to do. But if we're going to start talking about physics and things, that's when I mean I'm not the sharpest. This guy's going to be testing me. I'll have to be on my game. But I love it when you've got these intellects, these great minds who are willing to jump in and embrace the fact that there's something truly anomalous taking place, even if they're only doing it to try and find a rational explanation. Because as a researcher, myself included, that's what we've all got to do. We're all looking for the explanation. And I would think 99% of the time, there's going to be an earthly explanation that's perfectly plausible and explainable, kind of down to earth. It's that little percentage that we crave that makes it different. So doing the podcast, I mean, a lot of times there's a shelf up there. I do actually look into who I'm going to be speaking to and try and get a list of questions for them. I don't know if people realize that when you're talking on somewhere like Coast to Coast or Midnight in the Desert, they will actually send you an email and they want a list of questions from you that they can ask you.
Oh, really? Wow.
Oh, yeah. Not in every aspect, but a lot of the time, yeah. So I'll put together, ask me about the Wilsthorpe incident, ask me about Hummonby, and then give a paragraph of, because obviously that's no detriment to these incredible channels. It's the fact that their presenters, their audience, they've got to have the man's asking the questions. He's got to have a little bit of knowledge of it, and they're going through such a vast array of people, on a daily basis, that they can't possibly research that. So they've got to look professional, basically, aren't they? Well, Paul, you said you moved in 1993. You've got to tell people that if they're for them to ask you the question, haven't you? They've got to have that bit of information, because they're not going to sit down and think, right, let's spend half a day researching this guy because he's coming onto our show. So I don't know how I've got to this point here, Paul, that we're at now, but basically you have to do a fair bit of research. You're doing it. You've thought, well, I'm going to talk to Paul. Yeah, and
Pages of questions, exactly.
That's not weakness. That's good. That's kind of good work. You've done your grounding, you've done your homework, because I do it, and I think to myself, what am I going to ask this bugger now? I've exhausted all questions. You know what I mean? Let's go to some questions from the chat, please. And I love questions from chat, because you never know. You're going to get, it gets turned on its head, doesn't it? You never know what you're gonna get from people. So it's an avenue I never thought I'd go down. Just like talking at conferences. I never thought I would stand up and share information at a conference. The first one that I talked at, I'm not going to say I weren't nervous, because I were very nervous. Then the second one I were nervous, third one I were nervous, fourth one I were nervous, fifth one I were nervous. And I reckon however many I do, I'll be nervous, because a part of it's the fact that you want to impress who you're talking to. I'm not after adoration. but I want people to come away from it. They've paid money to listen to somebody. That I want people to come away from it thinking, God, that was great. I really enjoyed that. And that's how it should be. Staying with conferences, you go to, I've spoken at the Awakening, the biggest ones in UK, aren't they? The Awakening conferences, and a few of them. And I spend all day when I've done the talk or before the talk talking to people. Not because I just like to hear that they've paid money to come and have a good day. And I've seen other researchers, use that word lightly, some of them have been paid a lot of money to come from overseas, and they do the talk and they just go and sit upstairs or go into some other area and don't mingle. And yet that these people want, they want the attention, and they want people to look at their website and read their books. But they're actually, when you've got this captive audience, they're not there mixing with them. Full credit to Nick Pope, because the last Awakening that I did, myself and the second to last, myself, Nick Pope stayed around speaking to everybody. Daryl Sims did. He was great with the audience, the alien hunter. That's what he likes to call himself. Yeah. But there were a lot of other people that just were absent. So they got these tables with a picture of them at the back, and they're just absent. And I think that's lacking. And I think it's wrong of the people that are doing that. They should be ashamed of themselves. And the last one that we did, the mini Awakening, earlier this year, an American guy came over, Nathaniel Gillis. You need to interview Nathaniel Gillis. He's one of the most sharp thinking minds out there, and stayed with people.
Already done it.
Yeah, he's a great guy, yeah, and he's one of the sharpest thinking, snappy kind of phrases and things he comes out with. It's highly entertaining man, Nathaniel Gillis. But did he stay with the people all day? Yeah, he did. And I like that. But nobody's saying that you've got to do, and you've got to be there for 8 hours. Nobody's saying you've got to do, but at least give a little bit back, and that's the way to be, I think.
No, I 100% agree with you. I think that's exactly where we should be, because everything is about people while we're here on this earth, whether you think it's an evolution thing or whether you think it's a planned thing. We are here to talk and interact with each other. That's the most important thing. Right, before we close this... Go on, you carry on. Go on.
I'll tell you what's a strange thing. If I go into Bridlington or go into Scarborough, not even out of the area, and somebody will come up to you and go, Paul, and I'll go, yeah, and it always surprises me. And they'll go, and it might be somebody I've actually spoken to on internet and I've never seen them, but they know you, and it's really bizarre because they'll go, yeah, we spoke. I sent you that report, and it takes probably takes a minute or so for me to gather enough from them to go, oh yeah, of course I remember. And you do it, and it's nice when that happens, and then I will spend time with people. I've never ever kind of shrugged somebody off, and that's happening more and more. Then that's kind of weird. Do you know what I mean? But you said before we end, so yeah, and I can come back later if you want, because I do know, Paul, that you had arranged for or wanted to do 2 hours. I've just got to take my wife to the hospital, to be honest with you. But so if you wanted to tag anything on, I'm willing to do that later, but I'm guided by you.
Excellent. Well, thank you ever so much for that. Yeah, I have pages and pages, and I didn't want to do any of a disservice by going through it quickly. So it would be great if we could have you back at some stage in the future and go through all these ones that I'm going to leave off for now. But to always end my interviews, I like to take a quick visit to the Koit Zone. Koit Zone! Now, Paul, in the Koit Zone, I ask you irreverent, inane, stupid questions. It just ends on a nice high and funny note sometimes. So let's go through some random questions. First thing, what food stuff do you loathe?
Oh, gosh, butter beans. I would never eat something like butter beans. Hot curries. I love curry, but I don't like really hot curries. I loathe the thought that I've been out and had a few beers and I've had a kebab, and then next morning I realise I've eaten a kebab, and so I loathe myself actually for doing it. Otherwise, I'll eat just about anything. Hot curries I'll stay away from, and unhealthy foods. I like a lot of unhealthy foods. Let's just put it like that. And which is odd, because in the next interview we do, I'll tell you what I used to do, which I've never told people. I'm not going to even do it. It's not rude or anything, by the way, but it'll surprise a lot of people as regards
And
healthy eating.
what reminder to healthy eating? So that's what I'll write down, because that'll be the reminder to get you to give that story. So healthy eating. Right, okay. Butter beans, by the way, somebody else has mentioned that to me on a Koit Zone before. So there's obviously something dodgy about butter beans.
Yeah, they're boxer called butter beans, aren't they? Yeah.
Aye.
Go on then.
What is your favourite film?
I don't watch a lot of films, but I did enjoy The Colour Purple. I think
Okay.
a very old film. But I don't really watch a lot of films. I don't watch a lot of TV, if I'm being truthful. Although I've just recently watched Rebus, and I did enjoy that. So I know it's not quite a film, the detective series. So I did enjoy that. Horror films, I don't watch. Star Trek, Doctor Who, I don't watch any of that. No, I don't. Fair crack to anybody that does. It's just not for me. And so, yeah, as a series, I like detective dramas. Is it a drama?
Yeah, which plays heavily into your investigative mind, presumably. Here's a strange one. So, what is the most ill you've ever been?
Oh God, yeah, probably this year and last year, and I genuinely thought I was going to die, and we don't know where it came from.
Oh, Christ!
It might take a few minutes. This I've sat in Bottom Garden, probably with laptop, and my glasses are on, and I start doing that. And it's hurting, and that part of your glasses, you think it's been rubbing. So I end up with my glasses up here. It was that painful. Then over the course of that evening, everything went tight on my face. My face all became swollen. I spoke to Jim Segala about this, one of the scientists at Skinwalker, because it was weird, because we'd been investigating some things. There'll be more work to do on that. It looked like I'd just been literally just beaten up. My eyes closed up, hospital. I'd got cellulitis, and they were worried that it were going to turn to sepsis. I got treatment. It took days, and it was absolutely terrible. Then I got it again a few months later. Both occasions, they initially treated me for shingles, and it turned out it weren't. It kind of confused them. And the second time I got it, I got a red mark here that travelled down in a line to my chest. All photographs of these things, and the illness, that same thing. They were really worried it would turn into sepsis, and no idea where it's come from. No idea how it. I suppose nobody knows how they get illnesses unless you've been next to somebody with a bad cold, and then you get a cold. You have an idea where you've caught it. But that's the most ill I've ever been in my life, and that's, I think, last year, late last year and early this year. And yeah, I thought I was going to die. It was terrible.
God, well, let's hope that crap don't come back again, eh? We don't want that shit.
Don't come back. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your favourite cartoon as a kid?
Oh, I used to like Roadrunner. Yeah, you've
Good
seen
choice.
Roadrunner, haven't you? And and how strange is that? Because as a kid growing up in the 70s, cartoons would come on, you'd hear that music, and you'd be straight to TV, wouldn't you? Looney Tunes is on, and you'd be watching these cartoons, and it was like a big thing. Whereas now, do kids even watch cartoons? I mean, I've got grandkids, and I know they watch a lot of children's TV and stuff, but it's just there. It's just like there's just an abundance of it. It's everywhere, in it, Whereas you were just to come on, you've got 3 channels, and there'd be a cartoon channel, or Saturday morning. Your favorite thing would be to get up and watch, I don't know, Banana Splits, or just crazy, innit? Because some people won't even know what you're on about, but. Shows that
I do, yeah. I used to like Banana Splits. We had a few old VHS tapes full of like the Looney Tunes that we recorded off the TV just to play them back over and over again. They were amazing.
And comedies, always. I mean, just going on. Comedies. League of Gentlemen. I just loved the League of Gentlemen, and I was so lucky because I'm a friend of Robbie Williams, and Robbie invited me somewhere a couple of years ago, and when I went, I can't remember his name. Oh God, what did they call the guy who used to be Tubbs in League of Gentlemen? Come on, Paul, I should know. But I got to meet him. It was just brilliant.
I know who he is. Yeah.
I can't think of his name. That's terrible, isn't it? You know, I'm sort of saying how good it is, and I can't remember his name. But yeah, it was wonderful because I can't believe I'm meeting
Steve
this guy.
Pemberton.
Steve Pemberton, what a nice guy, lovely guy, so accommodating, just like you, just like me. No edge on him, and what that. Hey, to be honest with you, that's what I've found with a lot of people who've got a very high profile. They're just exactly the same when you get to meet them as what we are, you know.
Exactly, normal people, because that's how you
Normal.
go through life.
If we are normal.
Yeah, well, yeah, I know. I get accused of not being. What is the best activity you've ever done?
Gosh, this will surprise people. Boxing. Do you know when?
Oh,
Do you know what? Do you know when people say, "Oh, if only." If only I'd have done that. If only I'd have done that, I could have been good at that. If I could have been good at anything in my life, it would have been boxing. And that's you know, that is a boast. I was incredible at boxing, and that what a thing to say. I can remember going to the gym, the boxing club, and I'm going to touch on that if we'd have done this again. But I can remember going to the boxing club as a schoolboy, and people like Harold Graham, he fought for world title, fought Sambe Kalambe, he fought Julian Jackson, top flight middleweight. But I can remember him watching me around the ring and saying, "Wicked left hook, wicked white cross. This young lad's going to be good. This young lad's going to be brilliant." I didn't know I was doing it. People who are good at things, like running, anything, they're born. You don't make the world's fastest runner. Usain Bolt, you could have had you could have had, just jump into running. You could have had an athlete who ate all the correct food, regimented, went to bed at 7 o'clock on a morning, and he wants to be the fastest 100-meter runner in the world, and he's good, but he's never going to be Usain Bolt because Usain Bolt is born. He was born with those attributes, genetic superiors, and I was naturally good at boxing. I was just naturally good, and it was a big regret because, you know, other things take over your life, and then you think you realise penny drops that you could have been good at something. You go back to it and say you're too old. You know what I mean? That's just life.
yeah. I know exactly what you mean. I could have been a good actor. I think I was going in the right way to be a hype. I'm not joking. I could have been a good actor, but I chose not to. So yeah, there are things in life
But
that we
that's
can
not. But in a way,
else
Paul,
do, and I think
in a way, Paul, that's not
go
over
on.
for you, is it? Because, you know, the acting profession, all ages of people are wanted for acting.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Yeah, sport's slightly different. Here's a random one: cheese, mild, medium, or filth?
Filth, very strong cheese. Are we talking about?
Oh God, I
Yeah,
hate
very
that.
strong cheese, crackers and cheese, lovely pickles, ham. Oh God, olives. Yeah, just feed me it all. I just love it. Yeah, yeah.
Filth, filth. Are you an alien invader that's taken over Paul Sinclair's body?
Could be that. Could be. I often wonder if we're all being played and we're all being worked, and just like I moved into this property in 1993, what it all mapped out for us, and a daft scenario, a bit like Jason and the Argonauts, if anybody remembers film of the gods looking over and saying, "Let's have him doing this. Let's put this up again him now." And who can say? I doubt it, but who can say? Nice to play with idea.
Aye. If you were truly an alien invader that's taken over Paul Sinclair's body, would you tell me if you were?
No, I probably wouldn't, would I? Because I mean, that's the big deceit. If they are walking amongst us, we're never going to know, are we? I mean, here's one. Have I married an alien? Sometimes I think I have.
She said the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, you know. But I mean, if we knew that, can you imagine paranoia in world if there was some kind of proof that was a reality? Can you imagine looking at your partner, your kids looking at you and thinking, oh, it's well into the twilight zone.
Isn't it? It's a paranoia world I don't want to live in, put it that way.
Yeah.
Which leads us to the last question in the Koit zone, which is you find a coin that once held transports you back in time to any point you can think of. Which time and place is that coin sending you?
Oh, good God, what a question. Uh, I don't know. I think I'd probably go. I think it must have been an hard time to live, but probably an idyllic time to live just after the war. So probably I don't think I'd want to go back to Roman times. I don't think I'd want to go back to biblical times. I'm on about if we were going to have some kind of existence. When I look back and I see how people lived 40 or 50 years ago, even if it were hard, we'd not got the trappings that we've got today of this crazy world. People talk about, oh, look at everybody's got an anxiety, everybody's got stress, everybody's got I don't know, some kind of ism. We've all got them. There's no, I don't think these things. Yeah, well, I don't think these things have been created and people are malingers and playing on it. I think it's the pace of life that's creating these isms, and people are struggling. People are struggling to kind of keep up with the fast pace, and that this might continue until, I don't know, until there's some kind of transition for human beings. And I don't mean some kind of space or alien type visitation. I just mean that it's an adjusting process, and that's why there's so many school children struggling. There's so many people in the world having panic attacks. I don't think these things are, because you can hear people from older generations say that never happened when we were younger. They want to just get on with life. What's the matter with them? I think it's the space of life. I think it's the speed that we're living, and the constant flow of information that's bombarding us all, that's creating these things. Probably didn't answer your question, that, but it's just a few views.
No, but I like it. It's an interesting thought to play on for the future. That one. In fact, I'm going to try and I'll write that down as well.
Isms.
Blah blah blah. For we can do that next time. Isms. Yeah. So that is the end of the Koit zone. Thank you ever so much for going through that. I have two final questions as always, and we can make these very quick because I know you've got to shoot off. What else do you like to do in your downtime? Any activities or guilty pleasures?
Yeah, I love painting. Although I haven't painted for quite a while, but I love painting, and I could probably send you some artwork if you want to. Huge canvases, big sort of oil paintings, and I literally just decided one day I was going to have a go at painting. My dad's brother's an artist, and he paints, and we bought some watercolors, and we were gonna give them him when he came to visit. Forgot, so I painted a picture myself in watercolors. In fact, I actually got it into an exhibition in Bridlington in David Hockney's sister's art exhibition that they were doing for painters. Unbelievable. He didn't sell it, but it was unbelievable that they'd take it on my first attempt, because there's an art gallery up there that I think I know his sister's was part of, or still is. So from there, I progressed to oil paintings, and I'll do these huge canvases, like say 7 foot by 5 foot canvases, and it's not just throwing a brush at wall. They're quite detailed. It take a long time. So with painting, I love just being out in the wilds anywhere, not necessarily researching. Me and the Bobster, my little dog, well, it's Mary's, but how some dogs just cling to you. We say it's Mary's because I bought him for Mary, but he likes me best. Yeah,
Lovely Bobster.
So everything. Yeah, there's not much I don't like.
Good stuff. Which leads us to the final question. What are you currently working on?
I'm on with another documentary with Les Drake. We haven't got a name for it yet. We've started interviewing people. It's step away from Wolflands. It's more UFO related, and we've got some strange poltergeist type paranormal events mixed into it. And I'm working on a documentary with Chris Turner. And if nobody knows about Chris, he made the documentary Elusive, and we also made Bringing Down the Light together. So yeah, 2 documentaries, and just basically just working on staying alive. But let's stay breathing.
Amazing. That will bring us to the end of the interview. So thank you to everyone who watched this. Check out the links in the description to all Paul's socials and sites, etc., etc. Paul, thank you ever so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Yeah, we'll definitely do it.
Goodbye.
Paul, thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Been a pleasure myself. So great.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
To watch other KoitCast episodes, please click the image top left. To subscribe to my channel, please click the image top right. Please like and share to help KoitCast grow, and most importantly of all, please click the notification bell so you never miss an upload.